All right, so the arguments that we were just looking at are pretty simple, but they're also fairly formal. And what I mean by that is that they're structured in such a way as to make it clear that they are arguments, and they're structured in a way that makes it easy to identify what the conclusion statements are and what the premise statements are so that we can more easily evaluate the relationship that exists among those statements. If you look, for example, at this first argument up here about Netflix and Amazon, it uses this word because, which is a really interesting word that you're going to read about. The word because and the word since, these are what are called premise indicators. What they do is they indicate for the recipient of the argument what the conclusion of the argument is and what the premises being offered are. So you think about that word because. When somebody says to you the word because, you know that they're getting ready to offer you a justification of something, which means that whatever they just told you must be a claim that they believe is true. So a premise indicator like because tells us that the statement that came before it is the conclusion. And you know what the word because signals. It signals, I'm ready to give you reasons for believing what I just said, which means it tells us that the statements that follow the word because are oftentimes going to be premises or reasons that are offered in support of that claim. And then similarly, if you look down at this argument here about banjo players, you see the word therefore. Now think about what the word therefore is doing. The word therefore is not a word you use as the first word in a conversation. Right? Imagine somebody comes up to you and they say, hey, how you doing? Therefore, you'd be like, you only use the word therefore if you've already told me something. Because when you use the word therefore, what you're saying is, I just said to you some stuff that I think leads to a particular conclusion. And that particular conclusion is going to follow the word therefore. And that's what's happening here. These statements up here are our premises that this person believes leads to or makes this conclusion statement here true. Now, of course, the arguments that we create every day or that we get into are the arguments that we create or that we hear from those around us on TV and in newspapers and so forth online. They're not always going to be structured quite so formally as these. They're not going to have these kinds of signposts that help us identify that these are arguments and what the different parts of the argument are. So one of the things that we're going to have to do in this course is get really good at identifying arguments and non-arguments. And then once we've identified arguments, identify the different parts of the argument so that we can evaluate how effectively the claim being offered has been supported. So I'm going to show you an argument. It's a little more real world. It comes from the Santa Rosa newspaper, the newspaper down in Santa Rosa called the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and it's a letter to the editor. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to set you with a task. So it says, letter to the editor, your food section frequently features recipes with veal. In your ads say veal is a nutritious food. I strongly disagree. Do you know how it comes to be on your plate? At birth, a newborn calf is separated from its mother, placed in a dark enclosure, and chained by its neck so it cannot move freely. This limits muscular development so that the animal is tender. It is kept in the dark, cruel pen until the day it is cruelly slaughtered. All right, so this is an argument. So there is a conclusion that this person has come to that they want you to accept as true, and they're offering you reasons that they believe demonstrate that that conclusion is true. What I want you to do is to pause your video and see if you can figure out exactly what the conclusion statement is here, okay? It's not explicitly stated. So you're going to have to think a little carefully about, well, what exactly is the statement that this person believes is true? And then once you figured that out, ask yourself, well, what's the evidence that this person has for believing that? And when you think you've got those questions answered, go ahead and restart your video and we'll see what's up. All right, so here we go. That is a super important statement. I strongly disagree, okay? Because that's signaling to us that this person is taking issue with something that somebody else said, but they're not telling us what their exact position is, which means we're going to have to do a little digging here. What exactly is it that was said that this person disagrees with? And then how can I reframe that into an assertive claim that represents this person's disagreement? And that's the statement that this person is taking issue with. This person says, your ads say veal is a nutritious food. I strongly disagree. All right, well, if you strongly disagree with the claim that veal is a nutritious food, what must be your conclusion? And the answer would be something like, well, veal's not a nutritious food. right? And so then we'd say, okay, well, if that's your conclusion, if that's the conclusion you've come to, I need to know why you think that conclusion is true. In other words, what are the reasons that you've offered for that conclusion about veal not being a nutritious food? And that's going to be the other stuff here, okay? The stuff about how the animal was raised. And so if we kind of put this into a more formal structure, we might have an argument that looked like this. Veal is not a nutritious food because it is raised cruelly. Right? So there's the arguments. We distilled all of that letter down to just this one compound statement, and it more formally represents their argument. And now what this does is it allows us to evaluate the effectiveness of the argument. Do the premises offered actually provide reasons and support that demonstrate the conclusion statement is true? Okay, so the conclusion here is that veal is not a nutritious food, and the reason that they believe that is because it's raised cruelly. And we might say, that doesn't seem to work. You've offered me a group of statements, and you're purporting that this statement about it being, or these statements about it being raised cruelly, make the conclusion statement about its nutritiousness being true, but I don't see the relationship there. So I understand your argument, but I don't think it's a very good argument. I think a better argument for your claim would be an argument that includes premises that involve nutritional information. So if you're going to make the claim that veal is not a nutritious food, I want to know what the nutritional information is that leads you to that conclusion. So give me the nutritional information about veal if you're going to want to, if you want me to believe that your claim about its nutritional value to be true. Or change your claim. You could make a new claim. It's unethical to eat veal because it's raised cruelly. Okay, so at least now we have a conclusion about the ethics of eating veal that's connected with some reasons that would be relevant to the ethics of eating veal, and that has to do with the way it's raised. All right,